Good evening, and welcome to another episode of the My Two Bits podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, and I have with me, of course, my other host, Randy, and we are ready to talk some Gator football. How you doing tonight, Randy?
Awesome, brother. Let's do it. Looking forward to this one. We got a lot of nuggets to go over, so let's dive right into it, shall we?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we start each and every one of these, we want to just take you briefly through our mission, vision, and agenda for the pod. And to start with, our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Gator football. And then our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of the film. And while we will express some opinions, we will make sure that those opinions are backed up with some kind of factual evidence from either the film or things that we saw just in general from the game. And we will also have an evaluation of strategies and tactics and observation of player personnel decisions on the field execution. So our agenda, for those of you who might be turning in for the first time, we are looking at a few different segments. So we'll start off with our exciting plays. We're going to call that the "Oh My" segment in homage to our famous announcer Mick Hubert and his infamous calls that he had on the game. We'll then go into our offensive segment, which we call the Chomp segment, to review the offense. We then talk defense with Gator Bait. Then we have our visor throw segment, which will be our beef, right? Our things that we didn't like so much from the game and our takes on that and why. We'll then talk a little about our recruiting segment, which we call hatchlings, right? Our young Gators. We'll then talk about the culture and overall pride of the program and pride of the sunshine. We'll then review our move back you suck for officiating, right? So Randy will be our resident expert on that, as he is a high school official, as a part of what he does from his day to day. And then we'll wrap up and we'll play a little keep it or pitch it for the opponent for the next week, as well as just kind of summarizing where we are in regards to our thoughts about the team, and then finish out the show. So with that, let's get started with "Oh My" and our exciting plays from this week. What you got for me, Randy? Lay it on me. What did you like from the game this week? What really stood out to you?
Yeah, man. Saw a lot of good things. So at the end of the day, McNeese State, no disrespect to them, but we needed to go in there and do what we needed to do and bounce back in the ways we did. So the first thing I'll say is Scooby Williams. Scooby Williams, midway through the first quarter, about the 6:33 mark, got himself a big sack, a massive sack. I'd like to say he got himself a Scooby sack. So I'm telling you what, man, I'm serious. I haven't seen a linebacker come up and hit somebody like that in a while. Maybe they watched Swamp Kings the night before. I don't know. So that was great. It really
I love
was.
it. I love it. The Scooby sack. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What a great one.
So, and that's the thing, right? We talked about getting in, through the line more pressure. So that was awesome. The second one, I tell you what, Mertz got Webb open there on it was a 3rd and 5, but boy, it was about the 8:55, 8:56 mark in the second quarter, and he just took the joystick and went left, right, stop, turn back over, and just juked, just out of his pants, just unbelievable. So Webb, for a true freshman, showing a lot of poise out there, but showing that he can potentially be another joystick for us. So that was awesome. And then number 3, when it happened, I can literally hear the echo of Mick Hubert saying, "Oh my." And of course, that was the bomb. Mertz to Pearsall, 50 yards, winner, chicken dinner. That's what I got, B.
I love it. I love it, man. I have the same for Ricky, but I've got two different ones to start off. So number one for me was Trey Wilson out of the Wildcat. "Please, sir, I'd like some more." That was ridiculously good. I want to see that formation again. I want to see him get the ball again. I want to see him get the ball more. We'll get to that later. But man, that kid is special. He was electric coming around the edge there. Great fake pitch, by the way. Let's not undercredit the fake pitch to Ricky on the reverse there that he made look outstanding. I don't think he played quarterback in college or in high school that I'm aware of, but man, he looked great on that pitch. It was a great fake. It even fooled the camera guy. The camera guy's following Ricky, and then he's coming around the edge. Man, absolutely electric. I can't wait to continue to see more of this kid this year and beyond. Man, he is special. I really think he might be real special. Again, we'll talk about it more later, but wow, what a exciting play that was. I was bummed he didn't get the touchdown. Ended up on the 1 yard line. Of course, Graham ran it in after that, but really, really good stuff. I'm going to give some love to the O-line for my second O-line. They had a couple of plays. I know they're physically better than the opposition. I understand that. But there's still, you got to give credit where credit is due for execution. They had a couple of plays where they absolutely opened up a lane that you could drive a Mack truck through. These holes were huge, absolutely huge. There was a web run in the first half where they just opened it up and it just created a cavern out there. And then the biggest one, the biggest hole of all, might have been on Trevor's TD run. ETN, he walked in. There was nobody there. I mean, they opened up a massive, massive gap for him to run through. He started running, and then he was like, oh, I don't really have to run anymore. I can just walk this one in. That was fantastic. I loved seeing that, especially coming off what happened against Utah. Now, again, I get there's a difference in quality of opponent. There's no question. We're certainly more physical, but I think the blocking and execution from what I saw on film was substantially better than what we saw the week before, both in run and pass blocking, both. So really, really enjoyed seeing that. And then again, number 3, as you said, the Ricky TD, really nice separation from the corner. Not exactly sure what we saw on the back end there. Again, unfortunately, not having, the ability to see the full all 22 in our film review. You can't really tell what happened there from the TV angle. Not sure if we had a blown coverage, not sure what was going on the back end, but regardless, the guy who was manning him got smoked. And that's a credit to Ricky's route running, right? And a perfect ball by Mertz. I mean, hit him right stride. Really nice throw. Really nice throw. So yeah, some nice plays, some nice positive stuff. I think before we move on, let's take just a second. I think it's important to talk about, yes, we were playing an FCS opponent. Yes, we were playing an FCS opponent that wasn't very good, right? I think that's very important to keep in mind here. Let's not get too high, right? We don't want to get too low after Utah. We don't want to get too high after this game, right? Not be overreaction Monday here, right? But when you look at it, there were a lot of things that we really did well. I don't really care who the opponent was. And that's some of the things that I think we're going to take away here. And I also want to take away that some other FBS teams didn't do as well against FCS opponents. There were actually 4 games this weekend where FCS opponents beat FBS opponents. Now, granted, they were lower level programs, right? We're not talking about high level teams here. But let's take a look at our opponent for next week in Tennessee. And they had a little struggle with Austin Peay, who's an FCS, opponent as well. So I'm not going to say that I want to get over the moon or anything like that about this performance against, again, a very, very lacking team as far as talent in regards to ours. However, we did some things that were really good. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that completely, but it's also important not to overvalue it. What are your thoughts on the whole FCS, FBS situation?
At the end of the day, my thing is we understand the level of talent. We understand the recruiting. We understand, obviously, the biggest delta now in play is NIL, right?
Yeah, but very
guess
true.
What? You can sometimes the eye test is really hard to go against. And what we saw in those other games, and the real struggle from some of those teams. I mean, I was talking with a good buddy of mine, Tennessee guy, through and through earlier, and he said, to be honest with you, it was kind of gut wrenching to watch. Like, are we going to turn it on here? We're just going to run away from him, or is this going to be a struggle for us? So 100%.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think so. Here's the point I would make: if we beat McNeese, and I'm not necessarily saying that McNeese is the same level of Austin Peay. I didn't do research on Austin Peay to see what their stats were or how their performance was last year, like we did for McNeese. I didn't. Full disclosure, I don't know if they're a better FCS team than McNeese is or not. I mean, frankly, they probably are because McNeese is pretty terrible. But I don't know. I don't think it matters, right? It's a different division of football.
Yeah.
It does not have the same recruiting as any Power 5 or even non-Power 5 FBS school, right? It just doesn't, no matter who they are. Well,
Right.
maybe North Dakota State, they're pretty good. But aside from them, right? Or App State. But aside from those two, kind of standout programs in the FCS, overall, what you're looking at is most of the schools are just not at the same level, right? Not even close to the same level. And when you evaluate that and you see a team that, I won't say Tennessee, I won't say they struggled, but if Florida had a 131-13, what do you think the narrative is off our game?
Oh, much different. Much different.
Much different. I agree. Much different. A lot more, I don't know, right? A lot of that going on. Now, Tennessee is going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the history that they've put together since Heupel's been there, and they should. They should. I'm not arguing that. They deserve it. They've earned it. You're entitled to have, a game that's a little down. But nonetheless, I think the team that Tennessee has this year might not be quite the team they had the year before. We'll talk more about that later. We'll see, what we think about that when we get to that part of the review. But I'm not convinced that Tennessee is the same force they were a year ago. So we'll put that under our caps for now and come back to it later. So with that, let's move on to the offense. Give me your thoughts on our chomp segment, right? What did we do to chomp these guys, buddy? Where you at?
I think we're in a good place, it's funny. The great philosopher Urban Meyer would say we need 2 to 3 explosive plays per game, right? To make a difference, to give the shock and awe, to give them an uppercut and a jab, and really take us to the next level when it comes to the intensity of the game and the pace of the game and pulling ahead. We had 2 big plays, right? So explosive play, number 1, Travis Etienne, or as our announcer would say, ETN, 22-yard run. And of course, the bomb we mentioned to Pearsall for 50 yards. That was phenomenal. When I look at that and what we did, okay, we scored rushing touchdowns on our first 5 possessions, and we scored touchdowns, rushing and passing, on our first 7. What?
Yep. Yeah, we did.
What? Right? Again, like you said, barring competition, McNeese, no disrespect, but holy so. I think the one word that I'll take out of this performance, especially by the offense, and Mertz, we've said it before, field general. He was field general-like, wasn't he?
He was. Agreed.
So that was great. So we need consistency out of him, and so far he's given us consistency. So I really have not a whole lot of complaint and criticism for Graham right now. This is really unique here. I think this is huge. I'm not sure if most people know this, Gator Nation, the faithful, you might know this, but University of Florida has won 34 consecutive home openers.
Yes, sir.
The longest streak in college football that started back in 1990. Are you kidding me? Right?
Who took over that team in 1990, my friend?
Yeah, right. So we have the nation's longest consecutive scoring streak and wins on home openers. That is phenomenal to me, right? Okay.
Agreed.
My other caveats for for the offense is when I look at go back to the word consistency, right? So I'm going to emphasize our possessions when we had the football, our drives, right? Listen to this, B. We had a drive of 62 yards, a drive of 99 yards, a drive of 75 yards, a drive of 74 yards, a drive of 71 yards, a drive of 84 yards, and a drive of 62 yards.
Wow.
Right?
That's an impressive rundown.
Right? So when was the last time was our offense that much cohesive to be able to put that type of it was just it sounds silly, but rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, you know?
Yeah. No, agreed.
So I thought that was phenomenal. And then of course our two-headed monster. We might have to be three because of Mr. Webb there, but our
Right.
two-headed monster of ETN and Johnson come back from a 10 carry, 31-yard performance. Again, I know different competition, but 26 carries for 203 yards, 3 touchdowns, and set the tone early. O-line, I'm glad you gave them a superlative as far as oh my goes, that they deserved it because they did a 180 when it came to preparation and playing in the trenches. So beat that's what I've got overall for the chomp segment, my man.
I love it. I love it. Good stuff. So, some things that we want to look at that I think we're going to start to look at for pretty much every game is the QB rating for both ourselves and our opponent, as well as the yards per carry for both ourselves and the opponent. So we feel like these two stats are very indicative of what kind of performance you're going to have at both, passing the ball and running the ball, right? Pretty simple on rushing. We're going to look at yards per carry. That's pretty basic, right? But I think it's still value added. For the QB ranking, we're actually going to use the NFL passer rating. So we kind of did some research on this. We've looked at it. College passer rating is kind of nuts. You can actually theoretically go as high as like 1,200 on the college passer rating if every pass was a 99-yard touchdown, and then you can actually get negative on the passer rating if every pass was like a 1-yard pick, right? So it's a little nuts if you ask me how they calculate it in college. I much prefer the NFL ranking. So the NFL ranking, the way they look at it is they value completion percentage, they value yards per attempt, and they value interception percentage, right? Those are the kind of the 3 metrics that they look at the most. And the way the ranking works is it goes from 0, which would be obviously the worst, to 158.3. So remember the 158.3 for a second here when we talk about Mertz and where he ranked out in the NFL ranking. And again, I think we're using this because it's just a little more of an even statistic. Obviously, we're not in the NFL. We understand that, but it just seems like a more balanced statistic for QB rating that we want to use. So, having said that, Mertz had a 137.75 QB rating on the NFL scale. We'll let that sink in a second. That's really good. That is really, really good. Okay. That is high level. Anything over 100 is good. Anything over 120 is excellent. He was 137.75. Wow. That's impressive, right? That's really, really good. Now he went 14 for 17, excuse me, had 230 yards, something like that. Or was his number not that high? That might have been the overall passing yards. I think his was in the 180s or something like that. But regardless, and then of course had a touchdown and then also rushed in a touchdown, which this does not factor in, by the way. QB ranking does not factor in rushing touchdowns on either scale, whether it's college or pro. It's not a stat they look at, which is at this point kind of antiquated in my opinion. But hey, it is what it is. There's not a stat that we can look at that factors that in really overall. So we're gonna continue with this. And then let's talk yards per carry. 50 rushes, though we did see some discrepancy on how many carries we actually had, but we're going to go with 50. So one we decided to go with for 327 yards. That's 6.54 yards per carry. That's pretty good. 6.5 yards per carry clip, right? That's pretty strong. Now, again, we understand in both cases we're playing an overmatched opponent, right? They are not ready for the talent gap that we have against them, right? No matter what they do, it doesn't really matter what they do. They are not prepared for the talent gap that they're facing in this game. We understand that. We're not trying to get too high on the horse. We're just looking at numbers, and we're going to continue to look at these same numbers week in and week out, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind and keep perspective on here. So what else do we have from the offense? Good execution. I already called it out. Blocking was vastly improved week over week, right? When we looked at, though, I will say I did still have a few things that I saw Slaughter miss on film. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't near as bad as last week, but he did miss a couple of blocks. Still worries me a little bit. Really want to see Kingsley come back for next game. I think he's going to be vital to have him in order for our run game to be as successful as it needs to be against Tennessee. And we'll talk more about that later. But again, Slaughter was better. but he still did miss a few things. I thought Barber was better. I thought George was way better. He really stood out as being massively improved game over game. And I was really impressed with seeing that, which was great. Again, we saw some really great turnarounds week over week. We'll stress this all night. We understand the opponent was not of the same caliber, not even close. However, there were still things that stood out on film as being well done, well executed, well coached, right? As opposed to things we saw last week that were none of the above, quite frankly. So, continuing looking at kind of a film review, a lot of 11 personnel again, right? I didn't go through the time to take the actual percentages of what I saw on each, but a lot of 11 personnel, and I mean a lot, which I really liked, even in the red zone in some cases, a lot more in the red zone actually than we saw last week. I think this gives us the opportunity to be more dynamic, whether it's in the passing game or the running game, because it doesn't kind of show the defense our cards as far as what we really want to do as much and give them the option of how to defend it as easily. I'm not saying that in 12 personnel you can't be dynamic and it can't be defended, but the way that Billy has shown his cards so far, when he's in 12 personnel, you kind of know what he's going to do. It's very easy to decipher the things you need to defend against when he's in 12 personnel. So I love that we were using a lot more 11 personnel in both of these games, but especially this one. And again, I think it gives us the opportunity to be more dynamic, though we did show that maybe a little in the run game. We did not show it in the pass game. Unfortunately, that continues to be a struggle. We'll touch on it later. Trey Wilson, 5 touches, 10.8 yards per touch. Why 5 touches? He had 3 or 4 touches last week. This number needs to double at a minimum against Tennessee. I want to see 10 plus touches for Trey Wilson. The kid is special. Get him the ball. Quit messing around. That's pretty much all I got to say on it. I'm not going to go any deeper. 10.8 yards per touch is elite level stuff. Give him the ball. Enough is enough. Like, I'm not saying he needs to be the feature guy. I understand that's Ricky. It probably should be Ricky because of his route running, though at times even that gets a little questionable. But for the most part, he's very solid there. And I get he's the most experienced player and the receiver and everything else. But I don't care if his yards per touch, right, don't translate to the same as what Trey does. If his is higher, get him the ball more. Period. That's it. That's all it comes down to. You mentioned Trey on Reb. Man, he looks good. Really excited to see what he's continued to be able to do as he comes up and gets more experience and more touches. Really developing well, especially early. Good speed, great vision, knows where the play is supposed to go. And to your point, made a fantastic move on that screen that should have been dropped for a loss and ended up being a 20-yard gain.
Yep.
Just outstanding stuff. And then lastly, we'll bring it to our keep it or pitch it point from last week's episode. We talked about red zone efficiency, right? Randy and I both picked that we would be under 85% in the red zone. And we were both, I'm happy to say, wrong.
Wow.
We were 100% red zone efficiency. And not only were we 100%, we were 100% touchdown red zone efficiency. And I say, job well done. White, right? This goes back to what you were talking about, when the games you're supposed to win. Well, you do that by executing the way you're supposed to execute. And we did that in spades. Fantastic red zone efficiency. Obviously, you can't get better than 100%, and you can't get better than 100% touchdowns, right? 6 trips, 6 TDs. The other one, obviously, the 7th TD coming from Ricky on the outside the red zone possession, but really, really great stuff. Really loved it. So that's my take on offense. With that, let's move over to our Gator Bait segment. And man, I might be more excited about this segment than anything else we get to talk about on this particular episode. So, Gator Bait, defense, let's go. What you got, bud?
A lot of activity. So for me, as far as what occurred there, I was a big fan in the first quarter. Jaden Hill he laid out with an awesome pass block on 2nd and 8 to bring up 3rd and long for them. I love Jaden's activity I've seen early on, so that was great for me. I've seen him play better positionally on the ball in recent game You want to say that from Utah to here, so that's great. Um, Another one is in the third quarter, Cersei on a 3rd and 7. He was so disciplined, stayed
Yep.
there on the spy, on McNeese's QB, and just got up there on a 3rd and 7 to tackle him, contain him, to force a 4th and 6. I thought that was fantastic. And then one of your favorites, freshman, might I add, not that we had any freshmen on the field. I'm not sure if anyone saw any freshmen, but Jakeem Jackson in the 4th quarter on that drive that McNeese had, their second to last drive. I'm not sure if anybody realized Jakeem Jackson batted 3 balls down for incompletion. Phenomenal. So
yeah, he did.
Me, right? So to me, when I look at what this defense is doing right now, what I say earlier, B, I said I want them to play discipline, but I want them to be free. And it seems like a lot of those pieces are coming together. Mind you, this is not like UF's defenses of old. This is so different when you have so much young talent on the field. It's amazing to me to see the amount of freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, transfers, portal, whatever you want to call it, that's on the field. It's almost kind of unruly to think how young we actually are. And if they are picking up the schemes of AA, if they're really understanding defensive position football to make themselves available and put themselves in the right situation, I gotta say, man, it's really exciting because Gator Nation, forgive me, but I'm gonna say it, especially on 3rd downs, man. Third downs, buddy, were a killer when 3rd and Grant. Sorry, excuse me. But at the end of the day, when you look at what we did, 2 for 10, right? They went 2 for 10 on 3rd down, and we forced them in a lot of unique situations. So for me, positionally, defensive better. For me, when you look at spying the QB, and not to mention getting to the backfield, I will say 2 sacks, I'll take it. Would I like to see 3, 4, maybe 5? Sure, no problem. But guess what? I'll take 2 as long as we play discipline, contain, and overall, we're giving up 112 yards. I don't. And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Our defense was pretty much pulled at the end of the third, midway to the end of the 3rd quarter. So when you look at the 4th quarter, I mean, I know garbage time, but at the end of the day, we could have potentially held them under 100 yards for the whole game. Let that sink in, people.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's all I got, B. What do you got?
I love it, buddy. I am excited about the defense, and it's not because we gave up 112 yards to an FBS school. Though I will say there were other teams in the to an FCS school. There were other teams in the FBS that gave up more yards to FCS schools, in some cases, quite a few more yards than we did. So I won't say it doesn't mean anything, but it also doesn't necessarily mean everything, right? Not at all. However, there were things that I saw in this game that continued to build my faith in AA and this defense. They are looking like they could really be special. And I mean special. There are signs here. Now, I'll share some numbers with you in a minute, but there are signs here that this defense could be even better than we thought, right? We both predicted significant improvement for the defense. We both predicted them to be at least top 40. It's looking like this could be potentially even better than that. Potentially. It's too early to know for sure, obviously. But there are things here on film, and this is the important thing, right? We both do film review for the purposes of looking at what actually happens besides just the impact plays, right? The impact plays stand out. I get that, right? They pop, right? But there's stuff that happens on film that you're probably not watching for all the time that really can shine through and show some stuff on both sides of the ball. And that's why we do that analysis. That's why we look at it as best we can. Again, we're looking at the TV replays, so we can't see everything, but we can see enough, I would say. to at least be looking for some things that really stand out to us. So let's start with the same stats that we looked at on our side of the ball from a defensive standpoint. So when we look at the quarterback rating for McNeese and their quarterback, Mr. Glantz, he had a NFL quarterback rating of 59.4. I'll remind you, Mertz was 137.75. And we talked about earlier that anything over 100 is good. I would say 80 plus is around average. 59.4. That's not good. We shut them down. That is good for us. It's not good for them, right? Mm-hmm. Let's also talk about yards per carry, right, as an indication of how our rushing defense was. We allowed 3.29 yards per carry. That's pretty good. Now, again, we're not going to get this stuff twisted. We understand it's an FCS opponent, but I have to stress, again, there were teams that struggled against FCS opponents, at least to a degree. They were not dominant against them in all cases, right? No. And again, the things we saw on film were indicative of stuff that can be put together against any opponent. It doesn't matter the opponent that we saw. So those stats are not necessarily totally relevant, but I also don't think they're totally misleading, right? There's some truth in those stats for what we can, I think, expect to see going forward, right? So that's why we want to make sure we focus on these in each game going forward. We're going to look at them every game, those same two stats. We may also throw in drops depending upon if it's a factor in the game. We talked about doing that for this episode, but drops weren't really a big factor on either side of the ball. If they become a factor on either side of the ball, we'll talk about it, right? Because that can influence completion percentage stats, obviously, right? Accurate balls that weren't caught. See Pat Mahomes on last Thursday night. But you know, those things can impact the numbers. So if it's a significant impact on either side of the ball, we're definitely going to make mention of it because we think it is a factor, but we just didn't see it as being a big deal in this game. So we're not going to get into it. So thoughts on the defense after we look at those statistics. A little sloppy on the first series again. We missed a couple tackles. Your boy Scooby, for his Scooby sack that he did have on that first series, he had a couple of gaffes before that, unfortunately. Two different plays. He was kind of the guy that needed to make the play, and he jumped the wrong gap. He jumped the wrong angle. Now, he recovered. He did get back. He realized he was in the wrong and made the recovery, but unfortunately, he was a little too late. And that is actually what allowed that big run to happen. That and a missed tackle from Jordan Castell is what allowed that big play to happen. Scooby jumped the wrong way. He misread. Now, I will say that we got a great camera angle of that on replay. It did look like the back could go either to the left or to the right. Scooby jumped left. He was wrong and went to the right. Again, he did jump back and recover very quickly, but it was unfortunately already too late, right? So at the end of the day, still some things that aren't perfect, certainly. Still some areas of opportunity to improve, but overall, this was a solid outing. A lot of the tackles were good. I do think we missed at least 4 or 5 from what I saw. But I do think it's still a vast improvement over what we were seeing. Defense, great scheme, great execution, really, really, really good stuff. I'm so excited about this unit. I can't even tell you. We got set up for plays much more quickly than we did last week. That was a complaint of mine last week, if you remember, right? We were waiting for the calls to come in until way too late. That did not happen once in this game. They were still looking to the sideline for play calls, but it was way, way better, right? Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah, it looked way more fluid, way more in sync, right? We talked about that last week. We continue to be aggressive in formations, and we played a ton of man again. Love it, love it, love it, love it. I did see less blitzing. I saw less blitzing than I saw last week, which is not necessarily a trend that I think will continue with Armstrong. I think he just realized he didn't need to do it. He allowed his front four to kind of control that rush for the most part. I mean, we did blitz a few times, but it was not significant, not near the percentage we saw last week. And I think that's important to realize when you look at that sack number that you were bringing up, right? Those sacks that we got, one of them was on a 4-man rush. The other one, obviously, Scooby came in late. That's clearly not a four-man rush because he's a linebacker.
Yeah.
However, that play kind of broke down. He made a nice read. He didn't have anybody in coverage, so he rushed the passer, and boom goes the dynamite, right? Good stuff. So I'll give you a stat that I looked up that I think is super cool. We are currently through 2 games. Granted, it's only 2 games, but one of those opponents is a real opponent. I don't care what you say about Utah and who was playing. That's a well-coached team. That's a well-executed team.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we are currently 3rd in all of college football FBS division, obviously, in yards per game allowed, and we are
Wow.
number 1 in the SEC. I will say that again. We are the number 1 defense through 2 games in the SEC at yards allowed per game.
Wow.
Yes, sir. And last I checked, Georgia didn't play anybody difficult. So the fact that we are ahead of them, significantly ahead of them, by the way, I think that has to say something. I think it has to say something. Does it mean we're a better defense than Georgia? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Their talent is ridiculous. However, we are executing at an extremely high level so far this year. Really good stuff. My excitement for AA continues to grow, and this unit as a whole on defense, man, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but geez, it seems like it might be special. It's got a shot at it for sure. It's got a shot at it. We'll find out next week how good we are or aren't, because that's a tough offensive team we're playing. And to talk to our lastly point that I want to make here is to talk to our keep it or pitch it from last week. Rushing yards were 69. Total yards, as you mentioned, 112. So our prediction for keep it or pitch it was that we will keep it under 125 rushing. Yeah, I think we got there.
I think so.
So for those keeping score at home, I am 1-1 on that because I did think we were going to do that. Randy, unfortunately, with an 0-2 start on keep it or pitch it for the season. However, plenty of time left. We got a little feedback that we want to do a little more with that. We're going to try and make at least 3 categories per game, 3 keep it or pitch it's per week. Excuse me, not per game. Well, per game, depending on how you look at it. Sure. And we are going to keep score as the season goes on. So right now it's 1-1 to 0-2, but hey, it's early and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right. So that pretty much wraps up me for defense. Do you have any other thoughts you want to share there besides heck yeah?
I'm just excited, man. Just excited to see these young kids flying around the field and having a unique perspective, being a sideline judge for Florida High School Athletic Association, seeing these kids. A year ago, I was watching some of them, right? And or of the similar size and talent and stature on a high school football field. So it's just unique to see what some of them are doing just 6 months removed from last school year, right? So I'm just phenomenal, man. A massive amounts of intrinsic value and upside potential.
Love it. And yeah, in our case, a lot of guys 6 months removed from last school year because we're playing so many freshmen. I love it though. Hey, if they're the guys that should be playing, if the practice and the film dictates that they're who should be out there, put them out there. Let's not continue to make, which we're not. I want to emphasize that, but let's not continue to make the same poor personnel decisions based on seniority that we have for years, because that stuff drove both of us nuts, as we are both well aware. But I love that we're not doing that. I love that we're playing so many freshmen who are playing up to par and beyond, right? Searcy, right? Jackson. That's another really good example, and I love that you brought that up, right? Castell starting at safety 2 games in a row, right? I mean, really good stuff out there. Love seeing it. Love Kelby Collins out there. Love all the guys that we're putting out there who are freshmen. I'm sure I'm leaving out a ton because I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but man, really, really great stuff. So let's keep it rolling this week against Tennessee for sure. So with that, we do have to get to some things that are not positive, right? We have our visor throw segment here. And what are you chucking that AA visor on the ground for? Is that sacrilegious to say it's AA's visor instead of Spurrier's? I don't know, but what do you got, buddy?
It is sacrilege. So I'll tell you what, I start off last section. So do me a favor. Why don't you start us off here with the visor through? See what you
You
got
got
going
it.
on.
You got it. We'll do. So I think anybody that watched this game is gonna have this as a beef, and we left it alone last week. We didn't really talk about it, though it was an issue last week. Um, Certainly, other than the penalty we discussed, but special teams, special teams, special teams.
What special teams?
Special teams. You said that last week, I think, maybe. Game changers. They're game changers for the worse, right? Napier calls them game changers. That's his vernacular for special teams. He's right. They changed the game for the negative. This has got to get addressed. This has got to get fixed now. And I don't mean it has to be excellent, right? It needs to be not negative, because right now special teams are negative. So, number one, obviously, bad snap on the extra point. I get these things happen, but man, that is just so I let that one go. When we were watching this, I said I'm not going to call it out for one bad play. Stuff happens, right? It is what it is. And then they punted, and Ricky called poison. Though I will say I did rewatch this play. He maybe was out of position to field this ball. So that's kind of still his fault. And he called poison on a ball that landed inside the 20. And then later in the game, Trey Wilson called poison on a punt that landed inside the 20. Catch the damn ball. Fair catch the ball. And quit messing around. Don't let them down the ball at the 1 because it bounced inside the 20 and their punt team's all over it. Just catch the ball. Now, again, with Ricky's, in watching it again, maybe a little forgiveness. He wasn't really in a position to catch it. Again, I can make the argument that maybe he should have been. They were punting from like the 50. They should have had time to figure out where that ball was going to be and get under it. But praise, there was no excuse. He should have fielded that ball. Again, fair catch it. Not saying you should have returned it, but you can't let that one bounce. Either one of them, really. Though Ricky's, again, debatable, but I still think it was not okay. What are these guys being coached? What are they being taught? What's the plan, right? What's what's the idea? Because this is, to me, extremely basic fundamentals of special teams, game changers, whatever you want to call it. And it's not happening at a level that I would say even quite makes it to what I would expect out of high school. And I know that's harsh, but it's the truth. This is bad. This is bad. It is not correct. It needs to be fixed, at least to a level that is competent ASAP. And by ASAP, I mean this week. Enough is enough. However, I have very little faith that that is actually going to happen. So that's my beef on special teams. The only other beef I have is going to go back to another familiar theme, and that is passing route competency. I don't know what else to call it. It was clear to me that Mertz was looking deep more than a handful of times throughout this game, especially in the first half. And he didn't throw the ball. Now, again, I can't see what's going on with the route tree down the field, but I would guess, and I feel like I'm likely right based on what I know about this offense, that the route design did not get these receivers open, right? You probably had 2 guys going deep, and they were probably double covered or more, because McNeese was sitting in a very safe defense. We saw a lot of 6-man fronts. This is why we were able to run the ball so well. They did not really try to stop us from at least the loading the box standpoint, which means they had a lot of guys on the back end. When you have a lot of guys on the back end, they're sitting there trying to stop the deep ball, trying to stop the deep run, things of that nature. And that's what I am fairly sure. And again, I can't swear to it. I can't see the play. I wasn't there. You were there, so maybe you can shine a little more light on this. You were at the game. I feel like the coverage downfield was probably very good because they outnumbered our men 2 or maybe even 3 to 1. And I don't care who the players are that are trying to defend that and what their ability is. You're going to have success when you get 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 as a defense. It's just the way it works. The play calling has got to change. And in my opinion, at this point, with Napier at the helm, it is not going to change. It is clear that these are his schemes, these are his concepts, and they're just not going to improve. The one game he did get better at with this last year was Tennessee. So
Yeah.
prove me wrong, Billy. Prove me wrong. I want you to. I'm practically begging you to prove me wrong at this point. But these passing concepts, these route trees have got to get better. Guys are not going to get open when we know that we only run 2 guys deep. It makes it too easy to cover. And our deep balls, our vertical passing game that this offense actually relies on. If you looked at Louisiana and the way he set this up, it was running the ball and vertical passing. But you can't have vertical passing if your vertical guys are all double covered. It ain't going to work. And kudos to Mertz for making the right calls, at least again, from what I saw that I could see, for making the right calls and making the check downs as much as he did. But man, I was just like, why aren't we throwing the ball deep? Throw the ball deep. What are we doing? Again, I can't know for sure, but my guess is that's exactly what happened. So please enlighten me with your in-game experience, what you saw in regards to that as a part of your visor throw, even if you didn't have it included. But that's what I got.
I got you. I got you, B. First of all, before I go into that, you have to forgive Ricky, man. It was his birthday. 23rd birthday. You got to forgive the guy.
Well, it's not his fault.
I know. You got to forgive him. No, you know what? Kind of what I mentioned before, right? Our passing is plain vanilla, right? I don't even want to say Madagascarian vanilla B. Like that's well too exquisite, right? It was just vanilla. We're asking for Neapolitan by the end of the season. Right now, I don't even think we can get a teaspoon of Hershey's chocolate syrup on it. So it is what it is. You're not wrong. I'm sorry, you're not wrong, man. It's despite the 50-yard bomb to Ricky over the top. Outside of that, it's nothing else that's spectacular. But again, we're not going into SEC play. Does Napier pull the cat out of the bag? We'll see. Only time will tell with that. So, but yeah, outside of that, man, I've got a similar visor throw in the sense that special teams. Boy, I miss Brandon James. Talk about a ball full of energy at 5'7" or 5, whatever he is. Just amazing vision, clarity to see the field. So that would be great. Now, again, I understand the personnel when it comes to our staff. I understand we don't have a dedicated special teams coach. We've got an analyst or analysts, and then doing some different things there for feedback for Coach Napier. That's fine. It is what it is. The other thing I would say is the third down offside penalty in the second quarter. I really wish that would have been erased. The other thing is in the first quarter, Austin Barber had a 15-yard penalty. I know it was offset because of McNeese on the kick. I get that. But at the end of the day, just little self-inflicted things like that, I wish we just hold back on, right? The one good news to report on that, at least Crawshaw, and I know this is a visor throw section. So Crawshaw finally, and it was so funny. Yeah, I was at the game, but it was so funny when I watched the replay for a film study in the sense that, oh, great. Florida actually does have a punter, and he came in for the first time with 9 minutes left to go in the fourth. So as far as that goes, on the year, right, he's had 5 punts for 231 yards. He's at 46.2. Hey, Crawshaw, I need you to get that up to around 52, okay? Anything above 50, that'd be solid. So
once we average out the shank, we'll be fine.
Oh, gosh, I know, right? And that's the other thing, too. Coming up in SEC play, I mean, besides in the trenches, like we've talked about with the O-line and D-line respectively, special teams in SEC play can be a make it or break it in a game. And we've seen it happen time and time again. So those would be my main rants and raves when it comes to the visor section. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. I'm echoing a lot of what you say. And again, did we clean up the penalties from last game? Technically, yes, but at the same time, 5 penalties for 35 yards. I was honestly hoping for about 4 penalties on 25 yards, but I guess I was asking for 2, a little overzealous there. But
no, overall, you weren't. You weren't overzealous, and I'm going to call this out, though. At least 3 of those penalties, and I don't know the exact 3 or the breakdown of yardage or anything else. At least 3 of those penalties were when we had all backups in the game. So our starters had 2 for minimal yardage. I think it was 20, but the only reason it was 20 was that personal foul, right? Yeah. So that's really what we're looking at. And realistically, I think that is, important to look at, because when the backups were in, those penalties for me, throw them out the window. They don't count.
Okay,
So that's my take. That's my opinion. But those
fair
aren't the
enough.
guys that are going to be executing next week. They're not going to be in the game, right? At least for the most part. And I really think that overall the execution as far as penalties go was much better. I really did see an improvement there. Agree with you on the Austin Barber. It's a silly thing, but overall didn't cost us.
And my last rant and rave is just, I get the backups, I get garbage time and all, but man, to give up the ball like that, and I know Battle wasn't meaning to. Battle's probably okay, plays over, I'll turn it down. Oh, the ball's loose. Oh, I'll just get it. They called timeout when they did, then they agreed to review it, turnover, and they really wanted the shutout there, man. Really wanted the shutout.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, me too.
it's
Me
all right.
too, for sure. And that does suck. But again, you're talking about a walk-on, right? The
Yeah,
walk-on's the guy who fumbled, and no disrespect, he played well when he got in
yeah.
for the most part. He certainly gave all the effort, but at the end of the day, it's a walk-on that allowed that touchdown, and then a bunch of fourth stringers out there on defense. So
Yep.
yeah,
Awesome.
good stuff. All right, so
Good
let's
stuff.
move on to our hatchling section. Let's talk recruiting, right? Still no updates for us on the 24 class. However, we'll point out that yet another Mullen player. I should probably keep count of how many Mullen players have hit the transfer portal at this point, because man, is it all of them? Jeez, like it's a pretty ridiculous number of guys. It's clear
Right?
that the guys that were recruited by Mullen were not set up to play in Billy's system. And I don't just mean that from like an offensive or defensive scheme standpoint. I mean, clearly they're not putting in the same level of accountability. I won't say they don't work as hard, because I don't know that. I'm not there. But it feels like when they're held accountable for things that they do, like Perkins blowing some coverages last week that we talked about,
Bingo.
it seems like when they get held accountable, they're kind of like, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. And Perkins being the guy that we're in question on here, see you later, bye. The thing that I want to look for is, so far, nobody that Napier has recruited has transferred, or at least not that I'm aware of. I won't swear to that. I didn't look up every single transfer, but as far as I know, Napier recruits have yet to transfer. There is one I'm keeping my eye on. I'm watching out for Kamari. I think because Wilson has not quite produced the way he should, that there's definitely a possibility that he goes elsewhere. You're talking about a 5-star talent, guy that's
Right.
well regarded as being very talented, and he is not. It's not that he hasn't seen the field, but he hasn't seen the field like you would expect for a 5-star guy, especially this year. It's not the starter, right? We got a freshman starting over him. That may not sit so well with him. So we'll have to see in this current culture of transfer portal activity, right? And as active as it is, if Kamari hits that list, he's my watch list guy right now. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to keep him around. I think he's still a good player and still has potential that just hasn't maybe fully developed yet. But we'll see. I mean, he's definitely made some mistakes on film, but he's also made some positive plays as well. So that's one that I'm keeping an eye on. Aside from that, loved seeing. I'll kind of take a page out of your book last week and talking about the young players.
Yeah.
Ton of young talent on the field for this game, obviously, right? We saw guys that aren't necessarily normally going to see the field on both sides of the ball. The defense, especially, though, I will call out. You didn't see that much of a drop off when the backups came in, right? I mean, yeah, they gave up that touchdown because of the fumble, but other than that, man, the defense stayed pretty solid. Like, you didn't see a whole bunch of more yards gained when the backups came in. Loved it.
Right.
Loved it. It's real tribute to the coaching that's going on that side of the ball. Really, really enjoyed it. So, what do you got for our hatchling stake here?
Yeah, man. It's funny, in the third end of the third quarter, when a lot of them started getting replaced, the fourth quarter, I'm like, oh, look, my hatchling section.
Yeah,
No,
buddy.
but overall, I want to point out a couple things. When I look at what's to come down the pipeline, this to me is interesting. And so LJ McCray is a name that's been circled a lot, right? Coming out of Mainland, Florida, Daytona Beach area, right? 4-star defensive lineman. Lagway is going after this guy. Lagway, I think, has a great shot to sway and just kind of get him here. All right. Dalen Evans, Longview, Texas. Again, Evans is a unique one because of the positions that he plays. But I tell you what, all I'm saying is Texas A&M, 4 visits for Dalen Evans, 4 unofficial visits. Okay. Texas, 3 unofficial visits. University of Florida, 1 official visit, 1 unofficial visit. Now, when I look at On3's ranking, yeah, sure, there's a great probability he's going to sign with Texas A&M right now. But in the circles of recruiting, there's still a great potential there. Okay. Now, Mekhi Burrow, I get it. He just decommitted, but a lot of what we're hearing out of the program is it was a mutual decommittal, right? And he's going to commit to Georgia, and that's fine. He's from Georgia, and that is going to be what it is. That's fine. So is it a major loss? I honestly don't think so, especially if we can get McCray and Evans in a package deal. That would be phenomenal, right? Kenan Daniels, right? Kenan Daniels' performance last week, people, 38 at 427 yards, 7 touchdowns, 11.2 yards per carry. Is that even legal? Like seriously, he scored every single touchdown for West Point. Every single touchdown. Like, what? Makes no sense, right? We know that DJ Lagway went off in his first game this fall. Last week, similar fashion, right? Over 230 yards, 5 touchdowns. So either way, when I look at the hatchlings that are currently on the field, scampering, getting their legs, getting their breath, and what is to come in 2024, and again, going back to Billy's system, right, of culture, of doing it the right way. Again, he had to clean up a lot. That was a job that, a lot of people in the circle said they didn't wish on anybody. But I tell you what, I must say, from the personnel side, from the culture side, from the administration side, a lot of great things are happening back in Gainesville, for sure.
I love it. And I think I'm trying not to get too high on this recruiting class until it's signed, because this recruiting class looks amazing, right? We talked about this. We talked about it in the season preview. It looks really, really special. And I hope we can keep it together. I think that we can. I think Lagway's the key to this. And I think he's pretty locked in. But until we sign these guys, right, and in over till the fat lady sings, right? That's the way it goes. So we'll see what happens. A lot can still happen before now on National Signing Day, or early National Signing Day, as it were. But yeah, man, this class has the potential to be something else, really special stuff. And we could still add more to it. I don't know exactly what we will or won't. We'll see. There's a lot of rumors floating around right now, like you said. See what happens. Not gonna delve too much into that until we have it, but man, it really it's a lot to be excited about, Gator Nation. There's a lot out here that we need to give a chance to develop, because you can see already in 2 games this year what impactful freshmen can do, right? I know it's not something we see a ton of in college football, especially at our level, but for teams that don't have the established pipeline at a championship level, which we're working on, but we're not there yet. Man, you get some of these kids in, they can make an impact real quick because they're that good. So it's exciting stuff. All right, moving on. Pride of the Sunshine. What do we got for our culture segment here? What the team look like to you? How'd you feel about playing a overmatched opponent, and how they showed up for that game? Give me your thoughts.
Preparation. So I think the main thing that comes to mind is what Billy said in the press conference, right? As far as we need to get in there and not look at them as an FCS team, not look at them as a lesser opponent. We need to get in there and do what we are supposed to do from a discipline standpoint, from a consistency standpoint, and from an execution standpoint. So as far as that goes, I think that was accomplished. When you look at the amount of drives that we had, the length of those drives, the red zone efficiency, phenomenal. Mertz had the team just jacked up. I mean, he's going around slapping guys on the helmet, slapping them on the shoulder pads, slapping them on the rear end. Mertz is that guy. And here's the thing. I understand he did not excel the greatest at Wisconsin, but here's the thing. And I'm gonna go out on a leap here. Brock Purdy, the reason why Brock has been so successful, 4-year starter in college. He saw a lot of snaps. He saw a lot of defenses. Graham Mertz, 37 starts before putting on the orange and blue. I think that says something. And what did we say earlier? We don't need him to be Superman. We don't need him to ball out. We just need him to be that field manager. And he's actually done it so far. But I love the fact every play he's slapping somebody on the helmet. I mean, don't get me wrong. We know that the offensive linemen are supposed to help their running backs up, but I feel like these offensive linemen are running over to Etienne, to Johnson, to Webb, and not just helping them up, picking them up, catapulting them up. So I like to see that. The other thing I love to see is when Scooby got himself that sack, oh my goodness, Double A on the sideline went nuts. I thought he was having a spasm or something. He just went absolutely in. I thought he was going to lose the visor, the headset. It was crazy. He was just going nuts, right? The safety, he started dancing. The man was dancing. And so when I look at that, I'm like, holy smokes. You look at Napier. Napier's the calm, right? Truth be told, what we just need to do is go in there and be consistent. Napier's that, not too stoic, but calm, steady. You know exactly what you're going to get. Ben Stein-like voice, reason, calm. Okay, I get that. But I think Double A complements him very, very well, especially with what Double A wants to turn that defense into. The other thing I really enjoyed, and most people might not know this, Max Brown came in, right, with 2:45 left in the third quarter. Mertz is hyping up Brown on the sideline where he comes in. Now, Mertz could have gone in, could have said, you know what, I'm the elder statesman here. I need to pad my numbers. I need more reps. No, not at all. Look at this, people. Micah Leon came in with 10:30 left to go in the fourth quarter. Garbage time, game's out of hand. Micah Leon, for people who don't know, this is his 7th NCAA football season. 7th season, after injury, after heartache, after defeat, after getting played out for a position. And who is over there cheerleading him on as he takes the field? Graham Mertz, being the leader that we need him to be, right? So those are some of the things I saw from a Pride of the Sunshine position. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I love to see what was going on sideline. I love every single. Oh, you know what, B? I tell you what. To your point, you gave the O line an oh my, right? Guess who else gave it to him? Trev Etienne, right? Here's what he did. On that one touchdown play, you know what I'm talking about, where you could have fit a Mack truck through it, right? He had to downshift.
Where he walked in.
Yeah, he had to downshift and go, holy smokes, I don't have to work quite as hard for this one. They came back over. They gave him the scepter. He's marching with the scepter. What does he do? He turns, hands it to George, right? Phenomenal.
Oh, man, I love it. I love it. Yeah. I didn't know this. They didn't show this on TV. That's fantastic. Yep.
So that's what I got for Pride of the Sunshine, buddy.
I love it, man. It's good stuff. I'll echo some of what you said, and I'll add a little more as well. I'll start with my last point, which is I loved the safety celebration. Man, that team was more excited about that safety than they were about any of their touchdowns. And don't get me wrong, I realize that the touchdowns are more important, but man, they were jacked over that safety. That celebration they were going nuts. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. That's what I'm talking about. That is really, really just great to see the emphasis being put on the defensive side of the ball, at least more than it was. I'm not saying it matters more than offense or anything like that. Not trying to get Gator Nation hating on me for saying that I like defense better than offense. I don't. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that it carries a lot of importance and really loved seeing that. So my other two notes, penalties improved dramatically, right? They responded, and the method there, or the message there, excuse me, is that they responded to coaching throughout the week. They realized that it was a subpar performance from an execution standpoint as far as penalties went, with the exception of the double three, because that's not on the players. But they realized that it was not as good as it needed to be. They took the coaching, and man, did it improve. Again, I called it out earlier. The only penalties that really came on the starters were 2 for 20. It was basically nothing. That's really, really good to see, because that had to get cleaned up, and it did, at least for this week. Now we'll see if it continues. Again, you look back at last year, it started off pretty good, got worse as the season went on. I don't want to see that again, right? We want to see the opposite of that. So let's see it start not so hot, which it didn't, and improve, right? Let's see it continue to improve. So that's something I'm really looking for. And the last point I'll make is, what a great effort for an opponent that was overmatched. You know, there are a lot of teams that can come out and really just think they're going to dominate, not put forth a full effort, right? They're going to just kind of, phone it in a little bit, think they're better, know they're better, which they are better, but you still got to play better. You still got to execute. You still got to do it, right? That's what you got to do. And when you look at this and you see how this game went down, there was effort throughout the entire game, whether it was the starters, the backups, the third string, the fourth string, the walk-ons. It didn't matter. Everybody that saw time in this game, I saw maximum effort, and I loved it. That is the way culture is supposed to be built on a football team. This is a part of, it's not all of, but it is a part of how our lovely friend up there in Tuscaloosa, so sorry, Alabama, that you lost. So sorry. I feel for you, right? But that's a big part of the way that Saban built the teams that he built over the years, right? He had those guys up for every game. It didn't matter if they were playing Grambling State or Georgia. Didn't make a damn bit of difference. They played top level football against whoever their opponent was. The effort, the execution was there at the highest level, no matter what. That is a huge part of the reason for Saban's success. It's not the only reason, but it's a huge part of the reason. And I loved seeing that on display in this game. It was probably my favorite thing that I saw, really, overall, because we saw it on both sides of the ball. You saw guys putting forth every bit of effort. How about Damian George when he pulled out, running in front of Trevor on like that 30-yard run that he had, or however 20-something yard run that he had, just pulling and running way downfield, just like, give me somebody to block. You saw it. He didn't find somebody because there was nobody there, but that's not his fault. He was out there running it, hoofing it, pushing it, man. Maybe most improved offensive lineman. I don't think it's a maybe. I think it was, from game 1 to game 2. Damian George, shout out, buddy. What a huge improvement. And I feel like that is in direct response to the coaching they received this week, to the attitude they have as a team. They realized last week wasn't good enough for a lot of reasons, and they cleaned it up. Really good to see. Really, really good to see. So with that, we'll move on to our officiating section, which is lovingly titled "Move Back, You Suck," as our chant goes, right? So again, I don't have a ton here, as I didn't last week, and I'm glad to say that, because I don't want to have a ton here. Again, I think I mentioned last week that I feel like there's going to be weeks where I may have a lot here, and it may feel like a visor throw segment, but in this particular case, I don't have a ton. I think there were a couple bad no calls on us early, as in the officials missed calls they should have called on Florida early. But I do think that overall was a pretty good game. The examples I'll call out, I did see a hold by George on the first series on a run by Montrell. I think he pretty clearly held. They didn't call it. It is what it is. It wasn't as bad as the one last week, but it was pretty blatantly there, actually, on the replay. I was like, oh, yeah, that was a hold. And they didn't call it. Also didn't really actually love the late hit call on Mertz. If you looked at that replay, both those guys started their move at the same time. Mertz starting his slide, and the defender starting his, kind of attempt to tackle. It was simultaneous. Now, in real time, I will say it did look worse. But if you looked at that replay, really probably should have been a no call. But I'm pulling at straws a little bit there. It was a pretty clean game, but from what I saw. But I'm not the expert here. That is you. So give me your thoughts on the officiating from this particular game we saw.
It's funny you say that because and for the people who are listening who might not know this, we might have mentioned it or not, but we have our agenda, we have our sections, but the bullet points on each section, Ben and I don't reveal to each other. I mean, you guys are hearing it raw, live now, every recording. All right. So believe it or not, for my move back you suck section, I actually had that hold on George there in that series. So
That's funny. That's funny.
It was questionable, but I've always been taught, hey, you can grab in between the pads, but as soon as that player starts to break away and the other player does not release or does not move with them and the body twists and you see a pull of the jersey, it's a hold, right? So that was what it was. No problem there. Outside of that, on the 2-point conversion, the offensive pass interference was with 7:04 left in the second quarter. They were both jabbing at each other. Here's the thing. If it's one thing to say one player got leverage over the other, but they were both jabbing. It was pretty much 50-50, if not 60-40, right? Not a clear piece of leverage that was gained. So probably would have let that one go, but that's fine. It is what it is. What was really interesting, though, there was some attention. I'm not sure if you guys could see it on TV, but there was some attention on the alumni side, the Florida side, right around the 10 to 15 yard line, a couple rows back. There was an actual gentleman. He had to have a whistle taken away. I guess something happened. He was dressed as an official. It was actually very interesting. Very interesting. But outside of that, I thought one thing that was extremely comical, and you know where I'm going with this, in the third quarter with about 5:30 to go, false start on who? The entire O-line. I can only hope I get to say that one day. That was extremely comical. But if you all saw, Richie Leonard spun over from Slaughter, went to center. And so obviously didn't snap the ball. Everybody else moved. It was what it was. So outside of that, everyone seemed to be in a good position. The only other thing I thought was just a bit late was the replay on the fumble in garbage time, right? With 4 minutes left to go. So I felt like they could have made that decision a little bit sooner, a little bit clearer, and that's when we look at the changes that's made in college football, right? The biggest change is the clock doesn't stop anymore for first downs unless it's within 2 minutes of the half or the quarter, right? So that's a huge thing. They want to speed up the game a little bit. That's fine, great, but at the same time, high school football is so much different because you've got 5 on the field. I feel like in the college game, it should be a little bit tighter because you've got 8 on the field, plus you have the booth, plus you have replay, plus you have the SEC office taking a look at it. So again, it is what it is, but sometimes you wish those calls would be a little bit more definitive, more eyes would be on them. They would come to a quicker, more clear, obvious solution with that many eyes on them. But that's it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I like you bringing that up and talking about the differences there, right, between the two leagues and the one that you obviously participate in, and then what we're looking at the college level and how much different it is, right? Obviously, you have a lot more dollars involved at the college level, clearly. So it makes sense that it should be, more well defined as far as those roles go and the kind of backstops and the checks, right, and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, you're right. Sometimes it just takes way too long. And I hear you on that. I think that's a super valid point. So yeah, so appreciate the perspective there as always. And I'll be interested to see when we do get a game that is maybe not so well called as the first two, which, hey, I hope we don't. For the record, I hope it stays this way, right? I'd love it if it did. But I feel like that's unlikely. We have had conversations in the past of games where we were like, yeah, I don't know about that call. See Florida State last year, PI or no call on that last drive, but we'll leave that alone.
For now.
But at the end of the day, I think we're definitely going to have some beef here, and I'm really excited to get your kind of expert opinion on some of that stuff and those takes. So appreciate that as always. So from there, We'll proceed to our final section and kind of wrap this up, though I do think that will, probably give us a little bit of time here in doing that. So, as we do in the first part of this section each week, give me your thoughts on the team, where they are, what we see going forward, especially with Tennessee upcoming, and obviously we'll talk to some more specifics on that with Keep It or Pitch It. But let's take a look at kind of where we're at with that, and where you see the team going now that we've had kind of 2 weeks of data into this season instead of one. What are your thoughts?
There's no moral victories, right? But except for when they are. And so we just had a 4-game skid dating back to last year, right? We haven't had a 4-game skid since 2017. This win, I get it, FCS or not, huge, huge. It creates momentum. It creates positivity. It creates good vibes. It creates belief more than anything else. So if these guys, if these kids can feel that belief, know that Utah can't happen again. The opportunities squandered at Utah cannot happen again. You take away 3 plays, 1 to 2 flags, different ball game, different result. And we know, Gator Nation, it's based off of results. But at the end of the day, the defense is playing better positionally. Scheme. That is refreshing. No more 3rd and grand. Excuse me. So that's going to be good. Mertz, continue being a field general, bud. Just continue doing what you do. Love it. Continue to lead. Continue to encourage. Continue to mentor. And be that field general that we need. That's good. Special teams, wake up. Wake up. We're 2 games in. Wake up. You're way past the alarm. Get it together. Kicking game is going to be important. Very important. Heart of the Tennessee season, heart of the SEC season. With Tennessee coming up, big challenge. Did Tennessee struggle this past week? Yes. Fair. No problem. Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee expected to struggle as much against Austin Peay. Very fast-moving offense. A lot of snaps. I was happy to see our defense respond to some of those mistakes, and Utah not getting set on the defensive side, looking to the sideline. Man, AA fixed that within 1 week. Got those kids set, ready, snap their head around. Let's go. Really happy to see that. So when I look at the energy created by this win, the momentum created by it, I get it. It's Tennessee. And what I thought was really, really poignant was what Billy Napier said at the podium about Tennessee when he told the kids, listen, you know the importance of this game. This game for years determined the outcome of the SEC East. And I just think it's going to be one of those games where it might not be high scoring. It might be in the trenches. It might be a lot of back and forth. But I like our chances. I really do. I'm really excited to see this game next week. The Swamp's going to be packed. DJ Lagway is going to be there. A bunch of recruits going to be there. The atmosphere is going to be electric. Night game in the Swamp with the Volunteers coming to town. We've got a unique win streak in the Swamp that we need to uphold. So those are my thoughts, man.
I love it. I love it. A really interesting take. So if you're right about it being low scoring, I love our chances in this game. So I know we both picked this as a loss in the season preview episode. I got to tell you, I think that we're probably right about where we thought we'd be on offense. Maybe a little behind that. But we're ahead on defense than where I think we both thought we would be. We both thought it would be better, but man, it might be a lot better. So I won't get too much into the Tennessee thing, but I do think it's interesting to point out, as of recording this, we are 7-point underdogs Vegas line on this game. We started out at 8.5. It's already moved down 1.5 In my opinion, that's probably pretty close. I'd probably pick it more like 6.5 based on what we've seen with these teams. Now, I'm not saying that I think that means we lose. But I definitely don't think Tennessee wins by more than a touchdown if they win at all. I'm still on the fence, and we'll kind of talk about this, or I'll kind of talk about this when we get to the keep it or pitch it and kind of how that kind of works out. But I'll be really interested to see how this works out. And if you're right about it being low scoring, I love our chances. I'm not totally convinced it's going to be that low scoring, but we'll see what happens. So just interesting there to see that line already move so much in just a day. Because again, it opened yesterday at 8.5. It's now at 7. Oh, that's a lot of movement in a day, right? This early in the week with no injury updates, no personnel decision updates, no depth chart, nothing. That's just the bettors moving on it that quick, and that's interesting. It's interesting. Definitely favoring us to be a close game at the least, if not even better than that. So we'll see how that plays out. My overall thoughts on where we are, much better than last week as far as an execution standpoint goes, as far as a discipline on the field standpoint goes. Those things were vastly improved, and especially the discipline part, right? The execution wasn't bad last week, actually, as we talked about, but I think it got better. Again, that's to be expected against an opponent like this, I think, to an extent. But the discipline stuff for penalties matters, right? I mean, that does matter. I'm still very nervous about special teams. You mentioned it, right? Get it together, get it figured out. And listen, I understand we can't control our kicker, right? We've got who we've got. He's going to make it or he's going to miss it. There's a lot more to special teams than that. Do the right things, do the smart things, do the things that somebody's got to be coaching you to do. I can't believe that we're not coaching them to, catch balls inside the 20. Like, come on, and just do what you're supposed to do. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be game changers, right? I mean, it's great if you are, but you don't have to be. But don't be game changers for the negative, right? Let's get that in line, because that's really killing us. I feel like, again, it's not been anything super dramatic to this point, but it hasn't cost us games or anything like that. But it could cost us a game this week. That could happen. That's possible. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. So with all that said, I think my overall thoughts going forward are, I am beyond excited about this defense. I think everything that I'm seeing from a scheme standpoint, from an execution standpoint, from a discipline standpoint, and from a potentially ability standpoint is just really, really standing out. That could really be a special thing. And if that O-line puts forth that same blocking effort, just the effort, I understand they're not going to be able to overpower the opponent, but the effort was there and the execution on those plays was there. If we can do those things at a pretty high level going forward, it's going to be a decent team. It really is going to be a decent team the rest of the season. So this week will tell us a lot, I think. With that, let's transfer over to keep it or pitch it for Tennessee. This is our game we're playing. So again, we kind of mentioned earlier where our score is at and where we're going to go from here. So we're going to try to do at least 3 each week going forward to try to give us an ability to hopefully not tie as much. So let's see where we're at on our 3 topics this week. So first topic, Tennessee total plays per game. So this is an offense that likes to move the ball quickly down the field, but they also rely on getting a lot of possessions. So they are currently averaging 75 plays per game, which is a lot, especially with these new clock rules. That is a big number, right? So our keep it or pitch it for plays per game, we will hold Tennessee to under 63 plays per game this weekend. Keep it or pitch it, my friend. Under 63. You keeping that or you pitching it?
First of all, I can't count to 75. That's a high number. Holy smokes. I tell you what, we will hold Tennessee to 60. Did I hear you correct, B? We will hold Tennessee to 63 plays or under?
That's the mark. Yes, 63 or under this week, even though they're averaging 75.
I'm going to pitch it.
All right.
I'm
Why?
pitching.
Why so?
I'm pitching. I think if we can hold them to 63, that's phenomenal. But I think maybe they're going to get 65 on us. Which, if they're averaging 75, then if we can hold them to 65, that'd be great. So, um, yeah, I'm going to pitch that. I think they get 65, no more than 66 plays on us.
That's crazy. So as we mentioned last week, we are not typically aligned on this segment. We tend to disagree. I'm literally in dead sync with you on this. I am pitching it, and I think 65 to 66 is the number. And I swear to you, as Randy said
Wow.
earlier, we do not talk about this stuff before we record this. This is a live recording. As far as when we're taping it, we do not do takes. We do not do editing. We just run, right. That is the way this thing works. We feel that gives you the most unfiltered and unbiased
Yep.
experience as a listener, and that was our goal in kind of setting all this up. And that is exactly the same thing that I have. I think we are 65, 66, maybe 67 plays, but I don't think we can hold them under 63. I will tell you this, if we are both wrong again, which I really hope we are, I think if we do hold them under 63, it gives us a fantastic chance to win this game.
Yep.
I think we do that by running the football effectively and giving us the best opportunity to potentially really get out there and make an impact, both from a standpoint of limiting Tennessee offensively, but also giving us the opportunity to move the football on the ground, which I think is going to be very important in this game. Now, I'm not saying that we should go out there and run against 8 and 9-man boxes. That's what we're getting. We throw the football, right? Take what the defense gives you. But at the end of the day, I think moving the ball on the ground, if we are given the opportunity to do so, is paramountly important in this game, because we will eat clock and take the ball away, especially with these new clock rules, from a very potent offense. So I'd love to see us do it, but I'm with you. I don't think we quite get there. Doesn't necessarily mean that we don't still have a shot in this game. But I think it does hurt our chances a little bit if they get, a higher number of plays on offense. So we're right in sync on that one, which is really interesting because we are normally not. So let's go on to the next and see where we fare. So Tennessee is currently allowing 270 yards per game in their first two opponents this year defensively, right? They're giving up 270 a game. Florida will account for 350 yards of total offense or more. Keep it or pitch it. Go.
Oh, I'm keeping that sucker. Here's why. Utah, 346. McNeese, 560. You add those two together, that's 906. You take the average of that, you're at 453. I say we can get to 400 yards on Tennessee.
All right. For what did you call?
I say we can get to 400 yards on Tennessee.
Oh, 400. Okay, I thought I heard 4 and change. So, man, I hope you're right, but I am going to disagree. I'm going to say we're just under this. I'm going to say it's similar to the Utah game. I do think Utah's defense is superior to Tennessee, but I think this is where we get into a situation where Billy has shown on film what he does. And I think it makes it very easy to stop when you show what you do and you don't vary it. The passing game, we already talked about it. The running game, just load the box. McNeese didn't do that. We didn't talk about this. We were up against a lot of 6-man boxes, almost all 6-man boxes against McNeese. It's pretty easy to run the ball with better talent and 6-man boxes. Like that makes it pretty easy to run. It explains the 327 rushing yards, right? Again, I'm not saying we didn't execute well. I'm not saying we didn't do things right. We did. Again, the O-line blocked phenomenally, but they blocked phenomenally against subpar talent, right? At the end of the day, if you're not loading up the box to stop the run, which any team that plays Florida absolutely should, that's what a good defensive coordinator would do against us, and let our 2 receiver vanilla routes go out there and, not beat you when we throw the ball. This is the concern for me now. Listen, I hope I am wrong. I hope you are right on this. I would love for you to even up the score on this one and be right, because I think it gives us a much better chance to win the game. But I only think it happens if, like you kind of hinted at earlier, Billy's been kind of holding off some stuff until we get to SEC play before he puts it on film. I hope you're right. I'm not confident that you are, unfortunately. And I think that really could end up actually being one of the differences in this game. I think the defense will play well enough to win. I'm not sure the offense will, and that's why I'm pitching this. So that's take number 2. All right, last one. Florida is currently averaging 6.52 yards per play in comparison to Tennessee's, get this, folks, 6.37. That's right. We have a better yards per play than the elite Josh Heupel offense out of Tennessee. It's kind of surprising, especially considering their opponents have probably not matched our caliber of opponents. They played an FCS school as well, and they played a very pedestrian Virginia, whereas we obviously played the 2-time defending Pac-12 champ. So, having said that, Florida will average more yards per play than Tennessee this weekend. So if you don't get where we're going with this theme, right? If you were to keep all of these takes that we have here, I think Florida wins the game. I'm pitching the first 2. Randy's keeping 1 and 2. What do you got for number 3 here, that we will continue to average more yards per play than Tennessee does come this weekend?
This is a tough one for me, but I'm not going to back down. I won't back down. So on that basis, because I'm going to keep
very subtle there. I like it.
Right? Because I'm going to keep the last keep it or pitch it, right? Florida will account for 350 or more yard total offense. I'm going to go ahead and keep Florida will average more yards per play than Tennessee this weekend. I'm just sticking to it. And you know what is, if Billy's going to go into the box just like Judge Smales did in Caddyshack and pull out the old Billy Baru, whatever he's got to do to go in there for the passing game and to spice up the offense a little bit, maybe some of the tricks come out of the bag against Tennessee. I don't know. I feel like in Knoxville last year, Billy had a great game plan with AR. Really could not have done couple things. Very few things could have gone better, right? That game was ours to win in Knoxville, and I think he gets our boys ready in the similar way in the swamp to keep that winning tradition against Tennessee in the swamp. So guess what? I'm keep it.
I love it. I love the faith. I love the buy-in. I wish I could be there at the same level that you are. Unfortunately, this is on offensive-based stat, and I do not have faith offensively to the level that you do here. I'm pitching this. Now, I won't say that I don't think it can be close, but I do think that we're not going to continue to average better, right? I pitched the 350 per game, so I like where your head's at, that you keep it based off that. I'm not necessarily pitching it based off that, but I think Tennessee still averages more yards per play. I think we're close. I don't think we're quite there. Now, don't get this wrong, Gator Nation. I'm not saying that I think we're going to get smoked by Tennessee. It's not what I'm saying at all. I think this is a close game. I already mentioned it earlier. I think touchdown win or less by Tennessee is probably what ends up happening here. But I can't quite get over the hump yet to say that we're going to beat them. I hope to be 0-3 on this stat come next week, because I pitched all 3 and I'd love for them to all be true. Love it, because I think we win the game if that happens. But at the end of the day, we're close. We're close. And I do think that there is some hope here, again, especially on the defensive side. I think there's a ton of things to be excited about, but It's a little too early, and I'm not ready to go there yet. I just don't think I don't think we're quite going to get it done. So I'm pitching this as well. I'm 3 for 3 on the pitch it. So we'll see what happens next week. Somebody's going to take a lead one way or another, because we're only 1 apart and we picked 2 different.
Oh yeah.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on that. Excited to see how that goes down. And again, I hope I'm wrong across the board. Let me be wrong, please. So Something we didn't really talk about, so that'll wrap it for keep it or pitch it for this week. Something we didn't really talk about last week that we just wanted to touch on this week, just real briefly, is we really love doing this. The whole reason we decided to do this pod in the first place is because we're having 3, 4, 5, 6 conversations a week about Gator football anyway, and we said, hey, why don't we do this? We talk about it all the time. Let's really let that passion go to something more than just some random phone conversations, right? So we really decided to kind of dig in and put this thing together and really tie it back and to kind of our whole goal of having this whole pod. And so far I got to say, man, I'm really enjoying it, really loving the conversation, loving the planning on both our parts, and then the discussion about it. I really think it's an enjoyable thing, and I certainly hope that anybody that's listening feels the same way. Really, really enjoy and appreciate you taking the time, as we've said, at the end of all these podcasts. But just wanted to kind of tie that back in there and throw that out. So, with that, any final thoughts that you have in regards to this week, next week, where your head's at for this game, and anything you want to share there?
No, I echo that, man. I know you've been asking me to do this podcast for a while. I said, you know what? Why the heck not? And for those of you listening out there to my 2 bits, thank you for listening. Just like Michael Keaton said in Batman in 1989, I want you to tell your friends about us, right? So spread the word. Let us know. Please comment if there's anything we can do differently. But this is just 2 guys who love Gator football, who go back a couple decades and enjoy talking about it. Again, we didn't want to become talking heads. We want to try and give you factual evidence. We want to try and give you analytical proof as to what's going on, why we think it's happening, and how it's happening, how it's unfolding, and how things can certainly get better. And also using very objective-based stats. Ben mentioned it earlier. Some of the QBR ratings at the NCAA level are very interesting. There's a lot of subjectivity into it, but we're just going to leave it alone. So yeah, man, enjoy the conversation, especially the fact that we are not comparing notes. We're not comparing sections beforehand. What you see is what you get. It's raw, it's uncut, it's unedited, obviously. But we prefer it that way. And thank you so much for listening, everyone.
No, absolutely. And to that point, thank you for bringing that up. I almost forgot to mention it. We did set up a Facebook page for the show. So if you want to get on Facebook and look up My 2 Bits, feel free to drop us any kind of comment there. We'd be happy to address any topic that you would like. Obviously we can't do them all at once if there are a bunch, but we will happily try to work some stuff in. We welcome feedback. We've been asking for feedback from some people that we first presented this to, and I think we've gotten some great feedback in that regard. So please feel free to hit us up on there. Leave us a comment, like the page, whatever you want to do is totally fine with us. So, just wanted to let you know that is out there now. I just set it up a couple of days ago, so it's up and live and running, and it is listed under My 2 Bits, Florida Gators Football Podcast. So feel free to take a peek for that and give us any feedback you'd like. We'll gladly take it. And try and make this any better any way we can, right, going forward. So, so with that, thank you very much, and we'll kind of close this thing out with our sign off here. So wherever you are, whenever you may be watching, thanks you for taking the time, and we'll see you around, Gator Nation.